today. So I'm Victoria Alexander, and welcome to Buying into Brooklyn, an online crash course in home buying in Brooklyn with my associates Rashida and Lisa. I've been doing this for 20 years, 21 years. Tina corrected me yesterday, which is so crazy. I've been doing real estate way longer than that, but I started Realty Collective, a stereotype defying real estate brokerage 21 years ago to help defy the stereotypes. Oh, here's Sarah. Defy the stereotypes associated uh, with real estate. So I'm a matchmaker, a therapist, your sounding board. My job is really to guide you and hold your hand through this process and help you get out of your own way, right? This is an emotional process, and I think that one of the largest somebody makes, and can be really stressful. And New York City real estate, no matter how much money you have, is stressful. And so you want to have a team of people that is going to make it as least stressful as possible and make you feel supported and taken care of, and that you don't need to think about the things that are not your expertise, and you want someone to be able to explain those things to you in layman's terms that you can digest. And those are the kind of team members I'm going to encourage you to work with. I hope that we can do that for you tonight. But like I said, this is not a hard sales pitch. This is about making sure you have the education at your fingertips to make good decisions. Do not let Zillow or anybody else make those decisions for you. So, sometimes I like to talk about broker fees, but I'm going to skip all that tonight and just hand it over to the team of professionals that you need to start this process. You need a mortgage professional, unless you miraculously have all cash and that's sitting in a bank account, and kudos to you, and a lawyer. No matter what scenario your finances are in, you definitely need a lawyer. So all of our jobs, we all have a fiduciary responsibility to you. And so we are all working in your interest. And that's why you want to pick people that you like and trust and feel comfortable spending a lot of time with, because you're going to spend a lot of time with this three group of people. And you want them to be able to work together in cohesion to make sure the transaction goes smoothly. And this is not all encompassing, right? This is an overview of the process to help you understand it. We are not going to get into every itty gritty little piece of things that could possibly happen. That's a masterclass that we will develop one day and charge people for. But all of those answers are in the ebook that I have written and on the Basecamp, which is the library of resources I've created for buyers. So that if you are up in the middle of the night and you're like, oh my God, what happens at the inspection? Like, what happens if, when there's an issue? Well, I have that all written out for you so that you can find it and it'll be at your fingertips, and you're not using Google, because, New York City is very specific and you need very specific answers for how things work here. So, I hope you feel empowered and educated at the end of this presentation. And I'm going to introduce you to the dream team. I'm going to hand it over to Rashida first to kick it off.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Rashida Sadiq, and yes, I actually met Victoria. I don't know if it was at you were the agent first or was it your closing, but either way, of yeah, representing her when she purchased her property, and we've been
16
working
years
together
ago.
16 years ago. Wow, and I've been practicing real estate for 23 years. Actually, April just made it officially 23 years, where I've been representing buyers, sellers in all of the boroughs, also included in northern New Jersey, and I also represent clients that purchase in Nassau County, Suffolk County, Westchester as well. But what I say is I practice real estate law. Sometimes I sleep and think about real estate law. So I'm very, always happy to participate in these seminars to give you guys insight on what the role of an attorney is. Um, New York is very unique. You definitely have to have an attorney as a buyer, and also as a seller, you have to have an attorney. The role of your attorney is to make sure that you understand all of the legal paperwork that you are signing, because this is for lots of first-time buyers, the biggest transaction of their life. And even if you purchase several other properties, it is still a major decision. So you want to make sure that you understand the process, you understand what you're signing. And this is what we're going to give you kind of an oversight on what the role of your attorney is. So I look forward to any questions you may have and giving you an understanding of the process. And my office physically is located downtown Brooklyn. And but I also meet clients virtually, especially, these days, Zoom meetings and things like that. But I still do in-person meetings as well. And we'll pass it along to Lisa.
Yeah.
Hey guys, my name's Lisa. I'm from Cross Country Mortgage. I'm a mortgage loan officer there. I have been working with Victoria and Rashida for a while now. Yeah, I think like almost 10 years at this point.
At this point, definitely.
Yeah, and basically I do mortgages. So if it's something residential, I can do it. From a co-op to a condo, single family, multifamily, etc. I'm licensed all across the country, but the heart of my business is New York City. About 90% of my business is condos and co-ops, so I really understand how those work, and they are definitely a different kettle of fish than buying a single family home in Nebraska. So you really want to work with someone that understands those intricacies, those complications. I always say that buying real estate in New York City is sort of like being a Marine. It's like the few, the proud, the strong. So me and my team really, really try to help you through the process to make it as easy as possible and also to make you understand what's going on and why so that you're sort of empowered in, like Rashida said, probably the biggest purchase you're making. So I'm excited to sort of talk about the process and answer any questions you have.
Okay, so let's take it away. Now I have to, oh, I should have done that already. There we are. That's us. Okay, let's see. Oh, I can make, ooh. Okay, why buy now? The rent is too damn high. I have not had to edit that line for a very long time now. You get to have your own design, right? You get to make it your own. You don't have to worry about your landlord being like, oh, I wanted to change the faucet and the lighting fixture and, get to put time and energy. And that feels really good because you get to feel some sort of pride of ownership, right? And it's a great long-term investment. You're paying somebody's mortgage, I always say, and I'm sure other real estate brokers and mortgage professionals say this all the time too. You're paying somebody's mortgage, either your own or your landlord's. Who would you be rather investing in? And over this time, you get to build equity. It's like having a savings account, especially in New York City, because in New York, historically, real estate has not, I mean, there was a tiny blip during COVID and a tiny blip during the financial crisis of 2008 where prices went down. But besides that, it has been steady growth to I mean, we're talking about a serious housing crisis now because it has been an exorbitant amount of property value increase over time. So think about it. I mean, I think in terms of having, a much safer and less volatile bank account or stock account. So those are some of the reasons that I encourage people to buy. And if you're going to stay in New York, if you're staying in New York, you should be investing in staying here. My mortgage, okay, so everybody knows now that we've said how long Rashida and I bought my house together 16 years ago. My mortgage is less than any of the apartments I've rented in the last year. So that just gives you some framing of that. If you get in at a certain point, by the time, it's been pretty, I feel like reasonable for a long time now. So, but I feel like I have beat the rental market like 8 years ago. So halfway in. So I feel like that is the sort of thing that really makes a difference for longevity here in New York City. And so as soon as you can get your foot in the door, even if it's not your dream apartment, I always say do it now. I am going to follow up and send you something called the rent versus buy matrix, where you get to actually look at the finances. It's a calculator from the New York Times. Give them lots of credit for making sure. The only times it doesn't really make sense is if you plan on leaving New York City or if you have a rent stabilized or rent controlled apartment. And so sometimes you will plug in these numbers and it won't make sense to buy something. And then Okay, so if you've done the rent to buy matrix and you looked at the numbers and you're like, oh God, I better do this because the numbers are looking like, hey, every time I rent, I'm never getting that money back. That should motivate you, right? And if it's not today, we're here. We're not going anywhere. We are willing to talk to you to help you get your ducks in a row, to help you figure out your finances, to help you file your taxes so you understand what banks look at so that you can make a long-term plan. Say, okay, I'm not ready today, but I will be ready in 2 years. Let's get on the same page. Like, let me start working towards this goal. And what do I need to do to do that? And that's why you have us as a resource to help you figure that out. So, and it's an important part of assembling your team. The first person you want to call, because some people, everybody always wants to talk to me. I know they like me so much. I'm like, great, we can talk. But really, who you want to talk to is Lisa, right? Lisa is going to tell you how much buying power you have, and if there are any blemishes or anything like, oh, your credit score, let's do a credit repair. Let's do a couple things here. We need to move this money around, like that. Those are the conversations you need to have out the gate, because even if you're like, I can't do this today, sometimes it's like, oh, well, my parents are going to give me up. I need to liquidate my 401k. Like, there's all these things that need to happen in a certain sequential order, or ahead of like when before you actually find the property. You don't want to wait until you're actually going to open houses to be trying to get a pre-approval letter. So these are the people you need for a transaction in New York City. You need an attorney, you need a mortgage professional, you need a real estate broker. Um, so I always then, because the first person I tell you to call is Lisa, now hand it off to Lisa to talk about a couple of things that people worry about when it comes to the financial piece.
Absolutely. So, like Victoria said, the first thing you want to do is just to figure out what your buying power is. And that's good for you because you don't want to go see places that are too high above your budget because that's not fun. You also don't want to limit yourself if maybe you are qualified for a higher mortgage than you think. That doesn't mean you have to take that higher mortgage, but it's a good idea to know what your buying power is. And that's what we do in a pre-approval process. So the pre-approval, it's really a rough draft. So we'll have a conversation. You'll fill out an application. I'll do a soft pull on your credit, not a hard pull. And I'll sort of crunch the numbers and give you an idea of what your total housing payment will be and what you're pre-approved for. So, cross country mortgage, we are a correspondent lending bank, which basically that means that we work just like the big banks, but all we do is mortgages. What's great is that we have like a whole bunch of products. So after I talk to you and get your documents, I'm going to really figure out what's the best product for you. And it might be an ARM, it might be an FHA loan, it might be a Sony May loan, which is a state of New York first-time homebuyers program that can give you down payment assistance. It is income restricted. We are one of their preferred lenders. But we'll basically go through all the options. And then I'll say, you know what? Go out with Victoria and see what you like. And as you start to fine tune what you want, we will fine tune that pre-approval. So you might be someone that's like, I totally know, I want a co-op, I want it in this neighborhood. These are some listings that I've started to see online that I think are interesting. Great. You might say, I have no idea. We might do a condo, we might do a co-op, we might do a single family home. We're just trying to see what's possible. If you go FHA, it's a great product because it can allow you to put as little as 3.5% down. If you're going FHA, you're probably looking at single family or multifamily homes because they can be a bit tough to do for condos. Um, I can 100%, one of the myths of mortgages is that if you're self-employed, you can't get a mortgage. That's not true. I work with tons of self-employed borrowers. I need to see your tax returns. And then we make a plan so that we're ready before you file next year's tax returns so that you're really amping up your purchase power. Um, and in terms of how much you put down, it really depends on what you buy. So co-ops, the standard is 20 to even 25%. Condos, you can put down less. Single family homes, you can put down less. It really depends on what program you go for, but there's a lot of options. So I think the first step is to really have a conversation with me or another mortgage professional to get an idea of what you can be pre-approved for. I will tell you to get pre-approved by a bank without them getting documents from you is a really, really bad idea. Because I want to get the documents from you so that I know that when I pre-approve you at this price, it works. It also, by the way, helps you when you do an offer, which comes a little bit down the line, because usually the first thing the seller's agent does is call me and say, "Hey, how does the mortgage look?" But it's really important that you go through that process with your mortgage loan officer so that you're 100% sure that if you're putting in an offer for a place at $500,000 down, you're not going to have an issue with the mortgage. After I get you that pre-approval, you go off with Victoria, you start looking at stuff, you keep me in the loop, and that pre-approval will stay valid unless one of three things change, in which case you immediately contact me. You change your job, you take on a new debt, like you get a new car or a boat or something like that, or co-sign a mortgage for a family member. Um, or those are really the two big things. So like if any of those things happen, you 100% want to reach out to your mortgage professional because that might change your pre-approval. That doesn't mean your pre-approval won't still work, but that means we want to recrunch the numbers to make sure there's not an issue.
And are you talking to people about, like, if there's high maintenance or common charges and tax abatements, and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So when someone calls me, if they have a property in mind and it's in New York and it's not a co-op, the first thing I do is look up on the New York State to see what the tax bills are, because sometimes the tax bill listed on a listing is different than the actual tax bill recorded by the city, and we want to make sure that we're using that right tax amount. If they are buying a condo or co-op, I will say, do you have an idea of what the HOA fees are for the kind of properties you're looking at? And some usually they'll be like, well, I've seen a few. It looks like it's around 1,000, right? And so then I might use that as a ballpark figure. But then whenever I give you guys the pre-approval, I'll say one of two things. Either this works great, but this is really close to your limit. So when you see a place you like, send me that listing so I can crunch the numbers before you put in an offer. Or this looks great, there's plenty of room here,
Right,
which
because
means that you could potentially go higher, or you could go with a place at the same purchase price but with a higher HOA fee, right? So just so that you know, like really what your max is.
right. And I feel like that also, that really helps them understand, though, if they're going to even pass the co-op board, right? Because a lot of co-op
Absolutely,
boards want
absolutely.
the debt to income ratio to be a certain point. They want to have the post closing liquidity in their bank account, and you need to help them. We all need to help them figure out what those numbers really look like, so that if co-ops aren't going to say yes, then why? Even if then you got a pre-approval in hand, doesn't mean that the co-op's going to say yes.
100%. And then just the last thing I'll say is, especially, I mean, really, if you're buying anything in New York, because as we'll talk about throughout this webinar, New York is like its own kettle of fish. But a co-op in particular, you need to work with a mortgage professional that knows co-ops, because Victoria is 100% right. As we'll talk about in a second, if you're looking at co-ops, you have to go through board approval. And co-ops have more stringent parameters for their board approval than the bank is. So if I know that you want to do a co-op, I'm going to look at that pre-approval to make sure it works with the ballpark calculations that a co-op's going to require before I get you that pre-approval, because the last thing you want is to waste your time hunting for a co-op that you're never going to make board approval. That just wastes your time and is not, fun for anyone.
No, and it's honestly really, like, it's defeating feeling. Like, why
Yeah, it
would
makes you
they
feel
accept
bad and
me?
just be
Why are
like,
you
no, I don't want
rejecting
to do
me
this.
before even I've had an interview? Like, you know, it's not a good feeling, and we want to avoid, you know, having to have that experience so that you understand why things are a certain way, right? Like you're not buying real property, you're like buying shares and you're investing. Basically, it's like you joining a small business, right? And now you're partners with these people, and they need to know that they can trust you. And the way they do that, they've set up certain requirements to that you have to, so that is across the board. There's no changing the rules based on, you know, we don't want to be doing any discriminating. So they're like, this is what we ask everybody for. And so you need to fit this requirement. And that's a great way for them to make sure that they're vetting people to a certain level, but it makes it really challenging for people that do have liquidity, you know, post possession liquidity issues, and or you know, are stretched really thin to get to some of these numbers. So, you know, we don't want people over leveraging themselves. That's how the 2008 crash, you know, one of many factors added up to. But so the other thing I like to tell people is New York City is not a place that is friendly to these AI sort of mortgage companies. If you're looking at Quicken or Rocket or any of these things, that is going to, you might save a couple bucks, but you are going to give yourself an ulcer and many gray hairs because they do not understand the very unique New York City parameters. And it's just same thing with, you want local experts that have industry history. So we're talking about, Rashida was my lawyer 16 years ago. I've been having this company for 21 years. When I have had one of those weeks because it's so busy where I get to write to brokers that I've known for 20 years. And it's great because then they're like, oh, I would love to do a deal with you, Victoria. I'd love to do it because we have made it through and they know my reputation. That we are closers. We get to the closing table. I'm a straight shooter. Like people like working with me because I don't jerk people around. Like those are and the same thing with the other brokers. I'm like, I would love to. Hilla, she's great. Julie, she's great. Like these are other brokers that I have long-term relationships with, have done deals with before. Those are the kind of industry experts you want on your team. People that have reputation, that have been doing this a long time. It's amazing when I send out a deal sheet and it's like, oh, Rashida, Michael Motion, oh, they know each other. They've been oh, hey guys, we're doing this again. Like it's nothing, right? They've done it a gazillion times over. So those are the kind of people you want to hire. Not your friend that just got their real estate license, not your uncle that, you know, also does divorce. You want somebody that does bread and butter real estate, the attorney that's closing transactions on a daily basis. That's all they really do. That is their expertise and niche. And that is what Rashida does. And so, yes, no Rocket, no Quicken. Don't, you know, be hiring somebody that fresh off the boat, as we say, but into the real estate industry. That's not right. Okay, so you're ready. You have your pre-approval. If you have listened to my homework, you have also called Rashida and gotten the lay of the land, right? Now we start establishing your buying. Rashida, do you want to talk now and say, like, because if they're listening, you're really listening to me and doing what I tell you to do, you're calling Lisa and Rashida before you go look at properties. Do people follow my instructions always? No. People call Lisa and then they wait until they find a property and then they call Rashida. So, Rashida, do you want to jump in and say, like, if you're
Yeah.
talking to somebody, but at the beginning of their search, what would you tell them?
I would say, yeah, I think it's better for you to contact your attorney in the beginning of your search because you don't feel rushed. You can vet your attorney, you can ask the questions that you have. Because one thing about once you find that property, things move pretty quickly. Your attorney has to be on it given the information right away so that the contracts can go out. I think of it like a roller coaster. So if you've spoken to the attorney in advance, they know, hey, okay, I'm putting in an offer. I spoke to you a month ago. Now I have an offer that I'm submitting. So just be on the lookout if it's accepted. So you've done that kind of homework and vetted and you don't feel rushed. Things you should be asking your attorney. And I know Victoria, I think they put that in their booklet that they sent out, but it's like, how long has the attorney been practicing? Will you be working with that attorney directly? Is the attorney familiar with co-ops or condos or houses? What type of communication style does that attorney have? Um, What are the hours? What is the, what are their legal fees? How are things set up in that way? So that you also can ask the attorney about what should you be thinking about as you put in your offer. So that comfort level that you have with your attorney in the beginning, once you get that accepted offer, can go straight into whether it's a co-op or a condo. Your attorney is ready to start due diligence. Whether it's a house, your attorney is ready to start reviewing the contract of sale right away, because even though when you find the property, you're not in contract until you actually sign it. So it's, yeah, the beginning of that roller coaster. While you're on that line, getting to find that property, as I say, interview your attorneys and ask those questions, because the attorney is an integral part of that.
Being prepared also like really helps your nervous system, like feeling like you are in control of this. And so, yeah, I do have a list of questions that I like people to share with people to ask attorneys, and they're majority of what Rashida said. But, feeling comfortable is like the biggest thing. Do you like, if you find me completely annoying, you should not hire me, right? Because you're going to have to listen to me give you advice, and you're gonna have to take it because I'm working in your best interest. And if you don't trust me and you don't feel like that is a dynamic that's going to work for you, go pick somebody else, because all of these people, that is the relationship you should expect from them, right? And so you want to feel, that is why I totally say, do not let Zillow, okay? So people like to, we all like to look at real estate on the internet. I love doing it. I have a client that I just signed a contract. They signed the side of their contract, knocked on wood, the seller signs in the next 24 hours, that had a really nice budget and it was one of the first times in a long time I've ever had a buyer that had that kind of budget. It was so fun to look at real estate on the internet. So I understand, even this is what I do every day, how fun it is to look and just look at all these different things online, right? Sometimes you hit buttons, and those buttons can cause a chain of reaction of things to start happening, like real estate brokers emailing and calling you and persuading you. And then, oh, if it's Zillow, then you're going to also have mortgage people calling. My client was like, do you know who this is? And I was like, no. She must have clicked on something, and then she has mortgage brokers that are not the mortgage brokers that are recommended on my list. And I'm like, and that is scary and could be a scam. Do not give them any of your financial information. I'm so glad she emailed me asking if I referred that person. I was like, no, 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 I have no idea who that is. Do not respond. If anybody ever, also all these people that want to, I keep getting all these scams as a real estate broker where people want to send me a Zoom link so we can talk about an apartment. I'm like, no, I'm not ever clicking on the Zoom link that you send me. You can take one from me, but not from them. So anyway, so it is important that you make conscious decisions and do not let the internet, the algorithms, the people paying to get in front of you make that decision for you. You need to do it with intention. And that is like my biggest advice. And is to also, do this legwork first before you get out there and really start looking in earnest. Go on the internet, don't click any buttons, look at all the properties, crunch your numbers, be prepared, and then do the deep dive. But I tell everybody, even when you're working with, don't click on anything. I will set up all the appointments for you. Even if they're having an open house, I do everything for you. There's no reason to be talking to other brokers. There's a reason that, there aren't bad people. This industry doesn't have a great reputation in some factors, especially for real estate brokers, because they do things that are not, in my opinion, not ethical. So you want to make sure you're steering clear of anybody that could put you in a compromised position. So now that you've done your homework and listened to me and talked to Lisa and Rashida, now we can go out and look at things, right? And so I like to have a conversation with people about their strategy, right? Are you in a rental right now? When is the lease up? Is that going to affect your timeline? Um, that will be a big play in how we roll out the next steps, right? Then we talk about budget and we try to understand like what you're really, even Lisa might have given you a very, very nice number on your pre-approval, right? But are you comfortable actually purchasing at that number? Are you comfortable with the monthly expenses that are associated with that, with the common charges, the maintenance, the taxes, all of those things that play? You're going to need insurance, right? There's lots. Then you might need to have a little bit of a budget for the things that utilities, right? You need to factor a lot of these things. Or if it's a co-op, some of the utilities are included. Understanding what the monthly nut is, and getting comfortable with that. So we have a conversation about, okay, we really can't, you are pre-approved for this, but we're going to cap your search here and your monthly is here. And that is what we're going to do. Then we talk about family. Is it just you? Is it you and somebody else? Is it you and somebody else on the way? Do you already have lots of members of your family? Do you have pets? What does that look like? And what are your long-term plans? Because I know like a lot of people are like, I'm pregnant. I need to buy in a good school district. And I'm like, no, you don't. Like 5 years is usually what we call the break-even horizon in New York City that you should really cannot sell. But I would say in the last 3 years, that is not true with some of the properties that we have turned over post-COVID. So, but plan on 5 years. So unless your kid is a genius, I can't imagine that all these pre-K programs, you don't need to worry about getting into real elementary school until around, 5 years old, right? So let's not stress too much about what could be, and let's deal with the cards we have now. Like, do you need to be by the park? Do you run every day? Do you commute into Manhattan every day and you want it to be less than 30 minutes? Like, those are the things that are quality of life that we need to talk about. Then we start talking about amenities. Do you want to be in new construction? Do you want a doorman? Do you like pre-war details? Is size really important to you? Like the square footage, right? Some people want, one bedroom, but they want a, 800 square foot one bedroom. You can find that in a co-op, especially in pre-war co-ops in certain neighborhoods. They have really big ones. You know, what else are things that people think about for the apartment? Do pets, right? Being able to sublet it. Okay, if you need to be able to sublet because you work in the film industry and sometimes you go overseas or go to LA, you can't do that in a co-op. You're going to need to only buy a condo. So these are the conversations we start having. So I understand your needs and we create a strategy and we think about like what your dream home looks like. Then I always say, okay, here, what are your 5 deal breakers? And then I tell you, make that list 2 or 3. Because in New York City, like I said, unless you have some extravagant budget, it's really about finding what you can afford within your budget and with all the things that you need to not go crazy. So where do you search? Lisa and Rashid are gonna hear something new out of my mouth. I always used to say Street Easy. And Street Easy has been the most user friendly. We have a backend database that I do set you up in so that you're making sure you're scouring the whole thing, because a lot of these platforms are now creating these like pay to play sort of um, uh, systems where you're not getting everything all in one place. And I think that really hurts the consumer in so many ways. And I recently started encouraging people to use homes.com. It does do a good job scouring, but it also lets you be very specific about certain things that you need because it's integrated this crazy AI into it. And people have really given me really positive feedback in it, and it is easy for people to send me listings. But you can look wherever. I would say that Zillow, Redfin, there's a couple places that don't always give you all the correct info, so we have to double check it. Zillow will say a co-op is a condo or a condo is a co-op. I don't know what they're doing with their data, but like they still have gaps and glitches, and that is always a red flag for me. So that's where I tell you to search. Again, don't click on anything. You want a buyer's broker that represents you. That's when you walk into a place and go to an open house. That broker represents the sellers and the seller and has a fiduciary responsibility to the seller. So engage in your own person that is advocating for you. You want an advocate, you want a coach, you want someone in your corner, right? I know, and I'm going to address it now because I said I wasn't going to do it in the beginning, is that last year, all the broker fee stuff changed and everybody was really nervous about it. And the broker fee, not only for sales, but also for rentals, right? We had a local law change here called the Fair Act. In New York City, because deals are so complicated, if a seller is working with a reputable agent that has, understands the market and the conditions, they have talked to them and encourage them to pay a buyer's broker. It behooves them to make sure that they have somebody coaching buyers, especially first-time home buyers, to get them to the closing table. It is very difficult for people to do that without that knowledge and expertise by their side. And so in most neighborhoods and most brokerages, the seller is still paying the buyer's broker. There are some neighborhoods, like if you're going to buy out in Canarsie, you're going to Yonkers, like the Bronx, you're going to have brokers that are not part of REBNY that might not have taught their sellers about the value of this, right? And so, Brooklyn, the majority of Brooklyn, has not come up. I have not had one deal that has been part of this, conversation. I'm always like, what is the seller paying? And I get a number back from somebody. And it's always something, it's not maybe the 3% that it used to be. Some people have, negotiated on that, but that's okay. The sellers brokers are doing a lot of heavy lifting. But we all are actually, but I feel like the brokers do a lot. Okay, so making an offer and negotiating. So I'm gonna just take a breath and let Lisa and Rashida talk about, okay, I'm talking so much always, and I'm it's so much information. I try to give you guys everything I possibly can think of, but it's just too much information. And you can ask me later. So Lisa, we are gonna make an offer. Do I have a pre-approval from you? And what else needs to happen to feel confident in putting in an offer on a place from your perspective?
So yeah, once you have so when you find the property that you're like, we're putting an offer on, you reach out to me because we've stayed in conversation this whole time. I'm totally up to date with what's going on with you. I will let you know if I need any updated documents, and then if it's needed, I'll get you an updated pre-approval. And basically, I'll send that over to you in Victoria, and I'll say, let me know when you have an accepted offer and we'll get things going. And then Rashida does her then Victoria and Rashida together do their magic to get us fully executed contracts.
Yeah, so I'm negotiating, we come up with a strategy. There's a lot of things that play into how much we offer, right? Was there 100 other people at the open house? Did did I call the broker and there she said 5 other brokers called me and they said they're putting in offers? Or has this property been on the market a while, right? Like, has it been sitting there? Was there an offer and it fell through? Did they overprice it out the gate? Just because something is still on the market, do not assume something is wrong with it. You never know. People, like, there's so many things. Let's go see it and then figure it out, right? Let's not discount it right away. So there's so much that goes into that. I'm not going to go into too much of the because there's so many different hypothetical scenarios we could walk through. Best and final, you're the only person. How much do you really offer? It's been sitting on the market for a while. What do we do? Let's cross that bridge when we find the property, and I'll walk you through like what my advice is. And I also, one of the best things is that because I've been doing so, I get to call the other broker and say, listen, tell me where we're at, what we're doing. They don't give me a number, but if you have good relationship, you get a good idea to help guide your clients in the right direction. I always call and say, how many people are interested? How many, like, before we put in the offer, I want to talk to the other broker and have a real conversation with them to make sure that we're not swinging too much in one direction. So it is super important, though, that we understand the terms of what we put our offer in on. So I'm going to let Rashida talk about, an as is versus what contingencies we should put on, the inspection, that kind of stuff. So Rashida, you want to talk about those parts of the?
Sure. So I
Yeah.
know as you advance the slides to making an
Oh
offer
my
and
God, I I
negotiating the
lost
terms.
I lost the thread, man. This
No
multitasking
problem.
is so.
No problem. So I'm going to
I
talk
did
a
like.
little bit about, as Victoria was saying, that, she's handling the making the offer and negotiating the terms. But I tell clients, even in New York, you're not in contract until the contract is actually signed. So your offer has been accepted. So they've basically determined what the price is, what your mortgage amount that you're applying for, whether it's contingent on you getting a mortgage. They, if there's special circumstances as like what's included, such as like chandeliers or special things like that. So those are like your main items. In New York, you have to do an inspection prior to you signing the contract. It's not like in other states like New Jersey where you do the inspection afterwards. So there's always, you'll put in your offer, you will be doing an inspection, while your attorney is reviewing the contract of sale and doing due diligence. So some things that typically may happen after your offer has been accepted and after you've done your inspection, but prior to you signing the contract is the inspection if there's things that come up. So prices may, be negotiated, repair credits may be negotiated. But all of that is put into that deal sheet. They may update the deal sheet, which has a summary of the accepted terms. That deal sheet is a way for the attorney, for the seller to prepare that draft contract, and for your attorney as a buyer to see what the basic terms are. As I said, your standard contract, if you're purchasing a co-op or a condo or a co-op or a house, is mortgage contingency if you're getting a mortgage. If you are purchasing a co-op, then there's also going to be, once you get into contract, the approval of the board. So that's those are your standard kind of contingencies. And then in all transactions, the seller has to give you good title to the property. But other things that can be negotiated is closing dates. Standard in New York is on or about 60 days for closing, but let's say the seller needs a longer time period, or maybe you have some flexibility because you're renting a place and you don't want to have an overlap between your closing. So you may have a longer closing date. So that may be something that's negotiated. Thinking what other things that may be negotiated. This is on probably not your typical deal, but sometimes there's post possession where the seller has to stay in the property before after the closing. But as a buyer, you want to know this because you typically get your keys on the day. But in a situation where the seller has to stay in the property for a couple of days after, that's part of the negotiating terms, and that goes on the deal sheet. But once those major terms are kind of hashed out between the agents, that deal sheet gets sent out to the attorneys. And then from there, your attorney now steps in. So remember, I told you in the beginning of the process, important to have your attorney ready to go, because now you're at the beginning of that line. And now your attorney comes in and starts doing that, what we call is due diligence and getting you into contract.
Yeah.
Um,
We have
so
a deal right now, Lisa, Rashida, that they're buying some furniture, that they have to close a permit. Like there are things that, come up with in these contracts that you want to make sure that these terms, I waited to send a deal sheet out until I had everything laid out so that I was sending stuff to Rashida so that, it was all there. We didn't want to have the permit details rolling in later. I wanted to negotiate with the other broker and make sure the buyers knew and we were transparent upfront about the complexities of closing this permit on this property. And because I knew that it might be complicated to close a building up with a open permit, I had the buyer's broker call Lisa and make sure that the buyers got pre-approved and got a second pre-approval, because Lisa told me she has a product that she can close with a permit. And Rashida, I did not email you that, but just so you know, oh, now you do. That was a contingency of ours, so to make sure that we could get the financing, because it is challenging, I think, for sometimes, and that's why it is important. I think you talk to a mortgage broker. The difference really, I usually early on in this call, I go the difference between don't call your bank. Everybody thinks, oh, I have Bank of America. They're not doing me any favors. They don't have my mortgage. They weren't doing me favors when I tried to buy my house. Like they only can offer me the products in-house. Lisa can offer a myriad of different products, 10% down, 20% down, different PMIs, all these different scenarios, because she's a broker. And so this permit probably would never cut mustard, in cut the mustard in other with a Bank of America or Citizens or something like that. You really need somebody that can be creative, and that's what mortgage professionals do. So I usually talk about that earlier, but the moment just hit me when I'm talking about this deal that we're all going to hopefully do together, fingers crossed. So now I'm going to go to the next slide. Now, once we get the deal sheets out, we've negotiated the terms, we're doing the inspection. Once you sign, this is the one thing I'm going to tell you, you can walk away. I am totally comfortable if you're like, oh my God, this is not for me. I've slept on it. I'm in a rational state of mind. We've taken some time. We've talked through, like, I know we've done the inspection. I'm having second thoughts. I don't want to move forward. Let's not move forward. Walk away. Like there is no reason. You are not committed to buying this house until you sign the contract and you give the down payment. And then once you give this down payment, that is at risk if you walk away. So that you can walk away at any time. So that's why I tell people that, oh, put in an offer. You're not committed until you put the sign on the dotted line. So don't feel hesitant. I always encourage people, if it's not an A property, it's a B property, and for first time home buyers, it really does help you be prepared to get an offer in on something that's not your dream home, because then you feel more confident. And I just did that with some buyers that we're working with right now. So and then we talk through, and then we realize that that is not the house for them. So now I send out the deal sheets, and it's all in your guys' hands from here on out, unless it's a co-op.
So getting you into contracts. So this the deal sheets to go out to the attorneys, and if you're purchasing a co-op or a condo, your attorney has to do what we call as due diligence, and that's reviewing the building documents. So that's the offering plan, the financials, the board meeting minutes, because even though you physically like the property, you want to find out what type of financial state, is there litigation, what's happening behind the scenes with that particular property. And that's the role of your attorney. Due diligence can take roughly about a week, depending on the building, because your attorney has to get the offering plan and documents from either the seller's agent or from the management company. Also, the management company typically has to answer questions, and they are a third party and they have their own time frames. They sometimes say, hey, we don't respond to you in 7 business days. That's our time frame, and we unfortunately have to wait for that. So that is what's happening before you even sign the contract. If you're looking at a co-op or a condo, is that due diligence. After your attorney does that due diligence, your attorney is going to sit with you, whether it's in person or virtually, and go over the things. Hey, we found this in the this information. Their financials are great, or maybe there's an upcoming assessment. Anything that they find that they think that you should be that you should know of. But the point of the due diligence is so that you're aware of the governing documents for the co-op or the condo, because once you become an owner, now you have to adhere by that. They're also getting you the the co-op application, the house rules, sublet rules. All of that stuff is happening during that due diligence period. If you're buying a house, the main thing of getting you into contract, I personally, as an attorney, I look up the property and I look to see if there's any open violations with Department of Buildings or any open permits that I can see. It's not a full search because the title company does that, but it's at least something that I can be aware of so that if we get into contract, it's not a surprise and we can maybe tell the seller, hey, I saw this when I did a preliminary search on the property, something that you need to be aware of so it doesn't delay the closing once we get the full title search. So all that is the role of your attorney in getting you into contract. And this happens before you sign. So if something comes up and you're not comfortable with it, or your attorney says, hey, maybe, they've been operating, they've had, maintenance increases of 10% for the last 5 years. That's really too high. You can say, wait, I don't want to proceed. You can walk away. You're not obligated to sign the contract. You're not, you can walk away from the transaction. So that's the process of getting you into contract. You still should be in touch with your mortgage person, because once you get into contract, your mortgage person is gonna leap in and do what they need to do. And Lisa can tell you what, while I'm doing the due diligence, what she may be doing in the background.
Absolutely. So Rashida is 100% right. We are going to be in 100% contact. So I know when you put in an offer, I know when the offer is accepted, and between that time between offer accepted and fully executed contracts, when the attorneys are doing their due diligence and negotiations, I'm making sure that we have everything we need and it's up to date. So we're ready to go once we have fully executed contracts. So that means signed by you and signed by seller. Once we have those, it's a live deal. So that means that I get initial disclosures out for you to e-sign. Those are basically rough drafts of the loan application. The final versions you're physically signing at closing, and your attorney is explaining to you what they're signing, but you also have seen multiple copies of them through the mortgage process. So those are the final versions. And then I'm going to get the appraisal ordered. and then we're going to get you into underwriting as soon as possible. And this is where me and my team really shine. We're just incredibly fast. So we're going to get you through underwriting faster than anyone else out there. Usually we have you back from underwriting before the appraisal's back, and then we update the commitment once the appraisal comes in. This is really important because, especially if you're buying a co-op, a big part of the purchase process is a board application. And Victoria and her team are amazing in helping you do a great board application. A crucial element of that that board application is the mortgage commitment letter. And that mortgage commitment letter comes after the underwriter reviews the file. So the faster your mortgage team works to do what they do to get you a commitment letter, the faster you get the commitment letter so you can put a board interview in. So I'm sorry, you can put the board package in so you can get your board interview. And like Rashida mentioned, for co-op, standard is on or about 90 days. Really, if you buy a co-op, it's all about the co-op when you close. I have some co-ops that close because we're super fast in like 45 to 60 days. That's unusual. I have some co-ops that I have a co-op that just closed today that took 5 months because it took 2 months to get board interview. So it's just how things go and why it's so important to work with a fast mortgage team. I'll tell you also, having a mortgage professional and an attorney that work together is really, really important. Because when Rashida does her due diligence, she always reaches out to me if there's something unusual and says, "Hey, I saw this in the board minutes. Is that going to be an issue? Hey, there's this assessment coming up. Is that going to be an issue?" And 9 times out of 10, if I know the problem sooner rather than later, I can figure out a way to around it. When things get tricky is when I find out the problem a month in because it's taken that long for the management company to give me the answers I need. And then we have to restructure things. So having an attorney and a mortgage professional that work together, I mean, along with the realtor, because I'm helping Victoria for the board package, she's helping me with stuff that I need if the management company's getting slow. But it's really beneficial to the buyer because it's making sure that the process is as smooth as possible. Once I get you that commitment letter, then if you're doing a board package, then Victoria and her team do their thing. You will get a commitment letter with conditions. Those conditions are required for the clear to close. And sometimes, usually they can be as very easy as paying, securing insurance and paying for your first year of homeowners insurance, which is required for every sale. It might be an updated pay stub. It might be something, else. But those are basically the things that you will be focused on so that we can get the clear to close. And then, Victoria, do you want to talk about? I'll say one thing about clear to close, and then Victoria can talk about board package. So once we have the clear to close, that means that we're ready to schedule. So then basically the mortgage is like, guys, we can do this. Let's get this closed. And then the attorneys do their magic. And that's until we get that clear to close, that's where me and my team are sort of working to make sure that we have everything we need so that we can get that for your transaction.
Thanks. I love not having to talk for that that long. You guys did a great job. So when we're working on the board package, we have 3 minutes left and I want to leave a little bit of time for questions. We're working on your board package in conjunction with Lisa. I'm communicating to her about the appraisal. Did the appraisal get ordered? Are all the commitments satisfied on the is the commitments all satisfied on the commitment letter that you feel comfortable with, so we can move forward and get the co-op application in. I'm usually onboarding people and laying everything out. There are two ways that co-op packages goes these days. If they have a beautiful digital platform like Domicile where everything is easy and organized and I'm not going to have to print out 300 pages of your tax returns from the last 5 years or whatever, or they are an antiquated OG board and they want everything old school paper and handed to them, and I have to deliver it to their office. So those are the two routes. Hopefully you get somebody that has gotten with the program and digitized their their board package. But either way, we are prepared. We've been doing this long enough, and I lay everything out for you. We create a Google Drive folder, organize everything, have a to-do list so you can mark off things that are still outstanding. And then we prep you for the interview. So like Lisa just sent me a letter today, which I got to check in with my clients. Do we have their board package ready to go? Because they started working on it a week ago in earnest. Yeah, because her team works too quickly. We got that appraisal done. So then I do talk to the other broker to make sure that we understand what the board is looking for, how they like things structured, to get feedback if it is the paper style, and making sure all the maths. And then I'm prepping you for the interview, which, it should not be stressful. These are going to be your neighbors. But if you're looking in Manhattan, it can be. But I would say Brooklyn, par for the course, like, is really that people want are not like strict, and it isn't very formal. It is a conversation, right? But I still tell you, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics, that kind of stuff. Then once we do the board interview and they tell you you're approved, then you get a letter from them saying that they've also been approved, because they need that at the bank to start working on the clear to close. Once we have the clear to close and they've done what Rashida likes to call is the juggling act, or what do you call the circus? You have some analogy
Yeah.
that's funny.
Yeah, so no, it's yeah, a circus of juggling act as well. But I know it's coming towards the end, so there's so much that we can still talk about. But just yeah, so your attorney is going once you have that clear to close, so you've been approved by the co-op. If you buy a house, you've been clear to close by your bank. If you're buying a condo, the condo has issued the waiver, and you've also been approved by your lender and given the clearance to close, and there's been no title issues. So now your attorney is scheduling the closing with all the various parties. The role of your attorney at this point is to make sure that you understand, you get your final bank numbers, you know what you're bringing to the closing. Closings are held in person. So as a buyer, especially a first-time buyer, I do encourage you to be there. There's worst case scenarios where you cannot attend, then you may have to give your attorney power of attorney to close on your behalf, but it still is an in-person closing. It's not remote. Your funds will be bank checks, or I sometimes have clients wire me the funds if they don't have a bank that they can get checks from, so that your attorney can bring the bank checks and the attorney escrow checks for the closing. It's still kind of antiquated in real estate where we do have, as I said, in-person closing, signing all original documents. But this is the time because you are really putting all of your funds on the line here. Prior to the closing, you're going to do a final walkthrough with your agent. That's done at least 48 to 24 hours prior to closing to make sure that everything is done and that everything's still working, there's no issues. And then at the closing, typically your closing is about an hour and a half to 2 hours of you signing documents, going over everything with your attorney, and then you actually get the keys at the closing. So that's why it's important that you do your walkthrough, because once you get those keys, it's now your property. And you could immediately go to the property, or if you're buying a co-op or a condo, coordinate to get access with the building on moving into the property. But yeah, your attorney's role is there from the beginning from once you get into contract all the way through the closing date, and your attorney will walk you through the process. So if there's things that we may have missed, but Victoria's going to open up to questions, and we can always touch base with you about the things as well.
Just call us. We're available. I'll send you a Calendly link. We'll find a time that works. Like, I will make time for you. These conversations are so important, especially if you're at the beginning of everything and you're feeling overwhelmed. Like, we can give you some sanity about how to step by step. There are a lot of steps in this process, so baby steps in the right direction are going to help you feel, like it's not overwhelming. So I'm going to open it up for questions. I have some closing. We'll send out some resources. I can go on about all the things that we can offer you. But I'm just going to if anybody has some questions, I know we're wrapping up. So I want to give you an opportunity to ask anything. I know, Sarah, are you still on here, Sarah? Yeah, I see Sarah's still on here. Maybe you're just listening though. If you want to take yourself off mute, you can jump in.
Hey, thanks. This was super helpful. Really clear. I mean, I think I've got a couple questions, but they're very particular. So maybe I'll ask you, Victoria, when we are meeting later in the week. But thank you all so much.
thinking about buying a co-op. So, I mean, you have the co-op experts here. If you have some, not very specific information about your personal stuff that you don't want to share, you can just go ahead. Don't feel like
Well, I mean, I guess the question, because I think the thing that's so opaque to me is to find out any, like, it sounds like actually that it is the attorney's perspective, like that you're the one, Rashida, who like understands like the insides of the co-ops in this way that like as somebody looking to buy, I can't tell how I would find anything out. Like if that's part of the criteria of like I would like to live in a building where it is well run.
Yeah.
And you
Hmm.
can't tell that from the outside. And so I guess
Exactly.
that part feels hard to go all the way through the process and make
Yeah.
an offer in such a mysterious
Hmm.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
Sarah,
and that's
Rashida, you talked, and then I'm going to chime in on
yeah.
something.
So yeah, that's the due diligence. And yeah, you really when you physically like the property, you may know some of the basics when you put it in your offer, such as the maintenance. You may know the neighborhood from seeing it, but the building itself, you're not going to know the financial history of it because you don't get the financials. Your attorney will get that once we get it. They don't just give that out until you actually have an accepted offer. So yes, that is the role of your attorney to look to see what's happening in their financials for the last couple of years. Is there litigation? Is there maintenance increases upcoming? What's the history? What are their policies? So that due diligence that I talked about a little bit, that takes roughly about a week or so. We review in the board meeting minutes to see what's the board been discussing. Is there issues with other shareholders? Is there, leaks happening in the building, repairs happening? So and because you're not tied to going into contract until you've completed the due diligence, that's why we mentioned that you can walk away once you do that due diligence. Your attorney, if something comes up and you're like, wait, this isn't, your attorney says, hey, these are kind of questionable, these are red flags, these are yellow flags, this is your comfort level there. You can say, hey, I'm not comfortable, and you can decide not to proceed. That's okay.
And
And
the other thing I'll just add to that is when I do the pre-approval process, if you come to me and you say, "Hey, I want to put an offer on this place. This is the co-op I'm thinking of." The very first thing I do is I look in our database. I search the project, which is pretty extensive, to see if there are any red flags. And that does not replace the due diligence, which is super important and which Rashida's going to dig into, but it lets me know, has the project been denied for reasons like litigation, violations with the city, bad finances. And that to me, if it comes up on the red list, I tell you, okay, so this was denied last year. So either the reasons that this was denied need to be rectified, or we're looking at, a pretty funky loan product. Or, but then simultaneously, Rashida, I can send that information to Rashida, and when she does her due diligence, she can confirm, oh, that litigation from 5 years ago, that's been settled, or this. And so, I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from, Sarah, but I think there are some ways before you put in an offer that you can at least find out if it's like on the red flag list for
yeah.
mortgage. And that'll give you an idea of what's going on.
And one of the questions we ask, like I asked the other broker, like, how are the building financials? If there's like only been all cash closings in the last like 3 or 4 transactions, that's a red flag, right? If it's heavily discounted in some way, that might be something. But I would say that we're getting a lot of information from the other broker. Good brokers realize that being upfront and being transparent about issues and making sure that the buyer is prepared for those things gets them to the closing table. Hiding that information only causes bad deals and things to erupt, and just a giant mess. And nobody wants to deal with that. I have a deal that right now in Greenpoint, and it is a building that it's legal too. It has an extra apartment that they move things around. They've owned the building for 30 years. It's a complex and needs a ton of like ton of work. Only my buyer, who is a very experienced person that has renovations, could be prepared to buy this building, but they let everything that anybody would scare off anybody else, know up front. And then we were like, oh, this is for you. You're the person to tackle this. You're the person that has the wherewithal to get through these issues. And that's why it's priced the way it is and positioned the way it is on the market. And so these are the conversations you have. But good brokers, like that's why I'm saying it's like good brokers, they're getting their sellers to pay the broker fee. And then they're also doing their job and making sure that if there is an issue, you know from day one, so that if your buyers are not there, they can move on to the next people because their job is to sell the property, not to tie up the property in 3 months of contract that it all blows up and everybody, ends up in a lawsuit. Like nobody wants that. We're all trying to make sure we get to the closing table, and that's their goal. And that's why it's important because not everybody has the same directive, and that's why it's important that you pick lawyers and mortgage professionals that is their directive also. Because if you hire your uncle to be your lawyer and he's a divorce attorney, his job is to agitate situations and possibly make them blow up, and get you what you want. And that's not, this is where there's a meeting of the minds here. There's not everybody, nobody's getting what they want here. Everybody's getting something of what they want, but not everything. So it's trying to find the middle ground. So don't worry, you're going to be in good hands.
That's so helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else, any questions? That was a great question. We like answering stuff like that because it helps us think about things that we're not, communicating to people. Okay. I don't hear anybody in the chat or anybody pinging. I have to be somewhere in 4 minutes. So I'm going to thank it. It's down the block from my house. It's okay. I want to thank everybody. I really appreciate everybody showing up tonight, being engaged and having this healthy conversation. And please reach out to us. I know no matter where you are in the process, we are here for you. We want to support you. This is a journey that is like, I feel so privileged to be part of people's buying process. It's one of the biggest decisions you'll make. And I feel, I love doing my job. So, okay, everybody had a great night. Thank you, as always, Lisa and Rashida, and your expertise and your knowledge. I really appreciate it. Thanks again.